Who's actually going to get the most out of a double needle walking foot? And who might be better off putting their money toward a simpler presser? If you're wondering whether this Consew 369 RB2 is worth the price for a regular home sewer or if it belongs in a small production shop, you're not alone. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The decision really comes down to the kinds of fabrics you work with, how often you need perfectly matched parallel stitches, and whether your machine can handle the extra weight without throwing a tantrum. When I first started looking at walking feet, the biggest hesitation was it sounds fancy, but will I actually notice a difference? I've spent a fair amount of time with both lightweight cotton tees and heavyweight denim jackets, and the moment you try to stitch through 3 layers of denim or a thick canvas bag, you instantly feel the pull of the fabric slipping under a regular presser. That's where the walking foot shines. Its feed dogs move in sync with the needle, pulling the material forward as each stitch forms. The double needle version adds a second needle, so you get 2 parallel rows of stitching in one pass, perfect for top stitching, decorative seams, or reinforcing a seam that will take a lot of stress. If you run a small apparel line, a quilting studio, or you regularly sew leather goods, this foot can actually save you time. Imagine quilting a 12 by 12 inch block with 3 layers of batting and a heavy cotton top. Using a standard foot, you'd have to go over each line twice to get matching parallel rows, and any slight shift in the fabric would ruin the symmetry. Slip the Consew walking foot on, and the feed system keeps everything moving evenly, so both rows stay perfectly aligned on the first go. The same logic applies when you're adding a top stitch to a leather wallet. The extra grip stops the leather from stretching or bunching, and the double needles give you a clean, professional edge that looks as good as a factory finish. On the flip side, if your projects are mostly simple t-shirts, pillowcases, or you're a hobbyist who only sews once a week, the extra cost and setup time might feel unnecessary. A standard presser does the job for straight seams on lightweight fabrics, and the walking foot's added weight can be a nuisance on a home machine that isn't built for industrial accessories. You'll notice the foot sitting heavier on the arm, and you may need to raise the feed dogs or adjust tension to prevent the machine from skipping stitches. That extra tweaking can be a deal breaker for someone who just wants to pop a foot on and start sewing. One practical strength of this Consew model is the angular stitching capability built into the foot's design. The angle helps you keep a consistent seam allowance when you're stitching around curves. Think of a curved neckline on a dress or the edge of a leather strap. The foot guides the fabric into the needle path at a slight tilt, which reduces the tendency of the material to pull away from the needle as you change direction. In my testing, that meant fewer missed stitches when I was navigating a tight corner on a leather tote, and the final seam stayed straight without the need to backtrack. Another point worth mentioning is the durability. The foot is machined from a solid metal that feels like it could survive a workshop full of heavy fabrics. Because it's a double needle foot, the 2 needles are mounted on a single shank, so you don't have to swap out components mid-project. That consistency is a real time saver if you're producing multiple items that all need the same top stitch width. The foot also has an adjustable width, allowing you to set the spacing between the 2 needles to match the specific seam you're after. A small but handy detail when you're moving from a 3 mm top stitch to a 5 mm decorative stitch. However, the extra metal also brings a few trade-offs. First, the foot is noticeably heavier than a basic presser, which can cause a slight vibration on machines that aren't rigidly bolted down. If your sewing table isn't solid, you might hear a low hum that isn't present with lighter accessories. Second, the double needle configuration means you have to keep both needles perfectly aligned and correctly threaded. A slight misthread on one needle can cause tension problems that appear as uneven stitches, and troubleshooting that can be a bit fiddly if you're not used to double needle setups. Finally, the price point sits higher than a standard walking foot, so it's an investment that only makes sense if you truly need the parallel stitch capability on a regular basis. So, who should walk away from this product? If you own a basic domestic machine, you rarely work with thick or multiple layers, and you're not producing anything that will be sold commercially, you'll probably find better value in a simple walking foot or even a regular presser. Those users also need to consider the additional maintenance, keeping 2 needles sharp, ensuring